Donald Trump is officially back, and once again, he is the favorite to win the 2024 election. Despite the Democratic National Convention kicking off a couple days ago, Kamala Harris is struggling to maintain momentum. As we dive into the latest forecast, it's becoming clear that Trump is on track to carry at least 270 electoral votes, according to his left-leaning prediction. Let's rewind to 2020, when the economists predicted landslide victory for Joe Biden with 356 electoral votes. In reality, Biden only secured 306. The stark difference underscores the uncertainty we face as we approach another pivotal election. In this video, we're going to break down the 2024 electoral map based on the economists' state-by-state ratings. We'll start by identifying the solid states, those where either candidate is nearly guaranteed to win with at least a 99% chance. These are traditional strongholds for both Democrats and Republicans. For Kamala Harris, she's expected to secure victories in the usual Democratic bastions. Washington, California, and Hawaii will fall into her column, alongside the 1st District of Maine. On the East Coast, Harris will win New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Add to this Maryland and the District of Columbia, and Harris starts with a solid foundation of 137 electoral votes. However, it's notable that states like Oregon, New Jersey, and even Delaware are not listed as solid blue, and an indicator of how landscape is shifting, even in traditionally Democratic territories. On the other side, Trump is poised to easily win nearly every state he dominated in the last 2 elections. We're talking about Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and the Dakotas. The state of Nebraska, including its 3rd congressional district, is also a sure win. Trump's grip on the South remains unshaken, with Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Indiana all in the bag. These strongholds give Trump 112 electoral votes, cementing his status as a formidable contender. Trump's resurgence in the 2024 race is not just a fluke. Even before Biden dropped out, Trump's campaign was gaining traction. Despite Harris entering the race, the momentum she was expected to generate seems to be waning. It's important to remember that this is the same economist forecast that gave Biden a 97% chance of winning the 2020 election, a prediction that was nearly overturned by razor-thin margins. There were 3 key states that were decided by less than half a percentage point. Biden's victory was decided by just 44,000 voters across 3 states. The stakes could not be higher as we approach November. Next, let's explore the likely states, where either Trump or Harris have between an 85 to 99% chance of winning. For Trump, the most obvious picks are South Carolina and Alaska, 2 states that he will likely carry by at least 15 points. These states may be listed as likely rather than solid due to the forecast's perceived bias, since we're looking at a left-leaning forecast. But make no mistake, Trump's support here is strong. The 1st District of Nebraska and the 2nd District of Maine also fall into this category, which Trump would definitely win. Trump's dominance in Iowa and Ohio states he has transformed from battlegrounds into Republican strongholds. This cannot be overstated. These states, which flipped dramatically in 2016, are expected to stay firmly in Trump's column. If you look at these states in 2012, Ohio voted for Obama, winning by 3 points, and Iowa by 6 points. Then in 2016, Trump won Ohio by 8 points and Iowa by 9 points. It was an absolute insane shift that no one could have even predicted. He continued to do the same thing in the 2020 election, where he won Iowa and Ohio by 8 points as well. It's funny to see that the left-leaning forecast even marked this as a likely state and not solid states, as even their governors who were Republican both won by over 20-point margins. I don't have a doubt that based on the last 2 elections that these states will trend any differently, and Trump will definitely continue to carry these 2 states. Moving on to Texas and Florida, which are another set of likely states for Trump. Florida has been shifting to the right for the last decade now. Joe Biden was supposed to win Florida by around 2 points. However, Trump ended up winning by 3 points. Even just looking back to 2012, Florida was one of the most competitive swing states in the U.S. With its 30 electoral votes, it had huge impact on the election. But in recent years, with the governor, Ron DeSantis, and Senator Marco Rubio both winning the re-election by solid margins in 2022, Trump should have their state fairly secured by at least 7 points as predicted in 2024, as we can see that this state is leaning red. I don't think we need to expand on Texas being a red state. I mean, Texas has sparked a lot of controversy, especially being with Texas making abortions illegal in most cases. in the last couple of years. Along with their gun laws, it seems that Texas is still a really conservative state, and we can assume that Trump will win by a decent margin here. Definitely comment down below what you think was one of the most controversial moves that Texas made in the last couple of years. Kamala Harris's path to victory includes several states that, while still leaning in her favor, are far from guaranteed. These states fall into the likely category where she has an 85 to 99% chance of winning. However, the margins are closer than Democrats would like, and any shift could spell trouble for Harris's campaign. Let's take a closer look at each of these states and why they're in the likely category rather than being in the solid blue. We begin with Oregon, a state that has reliably voted Democratic for decades. Harris is expected to win here, but the margin might not be as comfortable as it was for previous Democratic candidates. Oregon's political landscape has seen some upheaval in recent years. In 2022, the governor's race was unexpectedly competitive, with the Democrat Tina Kodak winning by single-digit margin. This was closer than expected and indicates that the state may be more in play than in the past. While Harris is still favored to win, the tightening of the race suggests that Oregon electorate is becoming less predictably Democratic, and the state could be more competitive if the national mood shifts further to the right. Next, we turn to New Jersey, which has traditionally been a Democratic stronghold. However, the Garden State isn't as secure for Harris as one might think. The ongoing scandals around Senator Bob Menendez have cast a shadow over the state Democratic establishment. Menendez, who has faced multiple bribery charges, remains a sitting senator, but his legal troubles have dampened enthusiasm among Democratic voters. While Harris is still expected to win New Jersey's 14 electoral votes, the margin could be narrower than in previous elections, making it likely rather than solid state. The Menendez scandal is a significant liability that could depress Democratic turnout or even push some voters towards Trump, particularly if the race tightens further in the coming months. But anyway, let's move on to Delaware, the home state of Joe Biden, which is another state where Harris is favored, but not by an overwhelming margin. Delaware's political landscape isn't as liberal as some of its neighbors, and while Biden's connections to the state boosts its Democratic lean, Harris may not enjoy the same level of support. The state has consistently voted Democratic in the presidential elections, but the margin has been relatively modest compared to the other solid blue states. In 2024, Harris is likely to win Delaware, but the state's fundamentals suggest it won't be a landslide. Delaware's 3 electoral votes are small but crucial, and the state's competitive nature underscores its challenges that Harris faces in trying to replicate Biden's success. Illinois is another state where Harris is favored, but the race could be closer than expected. Illinois has been a Democratic stronghold for decades, but its margins of victory have remained stagnant in recent elections. The state voted for Obama, Clinton, and Biden by the same 17-point margin, indicating that while it's reliably blue, it's not becoming more Democratic over time. In 2022, Illinois saw a relatively close governor's race with the Democratic incumbent winning by a smaller margin than it anticipated. This suggests that the state's electorate is not solidly blue as it once was, and while Harris is still likely to win, the race could be tighter than in previous cycles. Illinois' 19 electoral votes are crucial for Harris, but the state's stagnant margins make it a likely rather than a solid blue state. In Colorado, which was once a swing state, has leaned more Democratic in recent years, but it's not a sure thing for Harris. The state has a history of being competitive, and while it has shifted blue, it remains susceptible to Republican inroads. Harris is favored here, but Trump could make gains, particularly among suburban and rural voters who have drifted away from the Democratic Party in recent elections. Colorado's electorate is diverse and includes a significant number of independent voters, making it a state where national trends could influence the outcome. While Harris is expected to win in the race in Colorado could be closer than anticipated, keeping it in the likely category. Finally, we turn to New Mexico, a state that has consistently voted Democratic in recent years and in recent elections. However, the state's large Hispanic population has been showing signs of shifting towards the Republican Party, particularly in rural areas. Trump made significant gains among Hispanic voters in 2020, and this trend could continue in 2024. While Harris is still favored to win in New Mexico, the state is not as solidly blue as it once was. The Democratic Party struggles to maintain its hold on its Hispanic voters, who could make this race closer than expected. New Mexico's 5 electoral votes are not a large number, but they're vital for Harris's path to 270. the state remains in the likely category due to the potential for a tighter race, particularly if the national environment continues to shift. Minnesota, the home state of Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, is another state where the vice president is favored, but not by a comfortable margin. Minnesota has a long history of voted Democratic in presidential elections, but Trump came within 2 points of flipping it in 2016. The state's political landscape is shaped by a mix of urban liberal voters in the Twin Cities and more conservative rural voters. Governor Walz's presence on the ticket should give Harris a boost, but the race could still be close, particularly if Trump performs well in the rural parts of the state. Minnesota's 10 electoral votes are crucial for Harris, and while she's expected to win, the state remains in the category due to its competitive nature. I'll say this right now, if Trump makes Minnesota a super close race, this election is over for sure. But in summary, while Kamala Harris is favored in these likely states, the margins are closer than Democrats would like. Each of these states represents unique challenges, whether it's the Mendez scandal in New Jersey, shifting demographics in New Mexico, or the competitive nature of Minnesota. Harris's campaign will need to work hard to secure these states, as any slip could have significant implications for her overall electoral prospects. The uphill battle she faces in these likely states underscores the broader challenges of the 2024 election, where nothing can be taken for granted. As we move into the lean states, the race tightens significantly. These are the battlegrounds where the margins are slim, and either candidate could gain an advantage with strategic push. In this category, Kamala Harris has several key states in her column, but none are guaranteed. With a 65 to 85% chance of winning in these states, the Harris campaign must remain vigilant. Let's take a closer look at each of these crucial states. First on the list is Maine, a state that is with a complex electoral system that awards its electoral votes by congressional district. In 2020, Joe Biden won Maine by a comfortable margin, but Harris's lead in 2024 is much narrower. The state's 2 congressional districts are politically diverse, with the first district leaning Democratic and the second leaning Republican. Harris is likely to win the state overall, but the margin could be much closer than in 2020, particularly in the second district, where Trump has strong support. Harris's challenge in Maine will be to maintain her lead in the first district while preventing further erosion in the second. Maine's unique electoral system means that even narrow loss in one district could affect the overall electoral count, making it a critical state to watch. Next is New Hampshire, a state that has been consistently a battleground in recent elections. In 2016, Trump came within half a percentage point of flipping New Hampshire, and it remains highly competitive in 2024. Harris currently has a 77% chance of winning here, but the state's independent-minded voters make it unpredictable. New Hampshire's electorate is known for its late deciding voters, and the state has a history of swinging between parties. Harris will need to focus on maintaining strong support in the state's urban areas while appealing to the more conservative voters in the rural areas in those parts of the states. The Granite State's 4 electoral votes may seem small, but in a tight election, every vote counts. Harris's ability to hold on to New Hampshire could be a bellwether for her performance in other swing states. Nebraska's 2nd congressional district is another key battleground. In 2020, Biden managed to win this district, which awards electoral votes separately from the rest of the state. However, the district remains highly competitive, and Harris's lead is anything but secure. The 2nd district, which includes Omaha and its suburbs, has a mix of urban and suburban voters, making it a microcosm of the broader national electorate. Trump has a strong base of support here, particularly among more conservative and suburban voters. Harris's challenge will be to mobilize urban voters while appealing to moderate in the suburbs. The district's single electoral vote could be crucial in a close election, and both campaigns are likely to invest heavily in winning over these voters. And then we'll move on to Virginia, which is once considered a solid blue state, which has now become more contested in recent years. Harris has an 82% chance of winning here, but the race is closer than it was in 2020, when Biden won the state by 10 points. Virginia's changing demographics, particularly in the northern Virginia suburbs, have traditionally favored Democrats. However, the state's rural areas and part of the Tidewater region remain strongly Republican. The 2021 gubernatorial race, where Republican Glenn Youngkin won by appealing to suburban and rural voters, highlighted the state's growing competitiveness. Harris will need to replicate Biden's success in the suburbs while preventing further losses in rural areas. Virginia's 13 electoral votes are crucial, and a strong performance here could help Harris offset potential losses in other battleground states. Now, let's turn to the lean states in Trump's column, where he holds a slight but significant advantage. These states are critical to Trump's path to 270 electoral votes, and they reflect his strong support in the South. North Carolina is the first of Trump's lean states, where he has a 67% chance of winning. The Tar Heel state has been a Republican stronghold in recent elections, but the margins have been narrowing. In 2020, Trump won North Carolina by just 1.3%, down from a 3.6% margin in 2016. The state's growing urban centers, particularly in Research Triangle and Charlotte, have been trending more Democratic. While rural area remains solidly Republican, North Carolina has seen a significant population growth, with an influx of new residents from more liberal states. This Democratic shift could further tighten the race. Trump's challenge will be to maintain his strong support among rural voters while preventing erosion in the suburbs. North Carolina's 16 electoral votes are crucial for Trump, and a loss here would severely hinder his chances of winning the election. Finally, we come to Georgia, the biggest story in Trump's lean states. Georgia made headlines in 2020 when it flipped blue for the first time since 1992, with Biden winning by a razor-thin margin of 0.24%. However, in 2024, the state is leaning back towards Trump, who has a 65% chance of reclaiming it. Georgia's political landscape is in a flux, with rapidly changing demographics and increasing political engagement, particularly among Black voters in Atlanta and the surrounding suburbs. Governor Brian Kemp's strong performance in the 2022 midterms, where he won re-election by a comfortable margin, indicates that Georgia remains fundamentally conservative. Trump's challenge will be to capitalize on conservative base while addressing the concerns of the suburban voters who shifted towards the Democrats in 2020. Georgia's 16 electoral votes are pivotal, and winning here would be a major victory for Trump, signaling a potential shift in the broader national landscape. In summary, the lean states in both Harris's and Trump's columns are where the margins matter most. These states are not solidly in either candidate's camp, and the races each is likely to be close. For Harris, holding on to states like Maine, New Hampshire, Nebraska's 2nd District, and Virginia is crucial to her path to 270. For Trump, securing North Carolina and Georgia is essential to maintaining his advantage in the South. The outcome in these lean states will likely determine the overall result of the 2024 election, making them key battlegrounds in the final stretch of the campaign. Finally, we arrive at the tilt states, those where the race is so close that neither candidate has more than a 65% chance of winning. These are states that will ultimately decide the 2024 election with the razor-thin margins. Every vote in these states is critical. The outcome here could swing the election in either direction, making these the true battlegrounds of the election cycle. Let's dive into the details of each of these pivotal states. Starting with Nevada, this state has been a reliable Democratic stronghold in recent elections, having been won by the party in every presidential election since 2008. However, in 2024, Nevada is leaning ever so slightly towards Trump. With its 6 electoral votes, Nevada is crucial for both campaigns. Trump has a 52% chance of flipping the state, which is largely due to the shifting demographic and economic concerns. The state's large Hispanic population, which has traditionally supported Democrats, has shown signs of wavering, particularly in the face of economic challenges that have disproportionately affected these communities. Additionally, Nevada's significant number of independent voters who can swing either way adds to the state's unpredictability. The ground game in Nevada will be critical, with both campaigns needing to focus on turnout and persuasion to tip the scales in their favor. Arizona, another key state in the Sun Belt, is also leaning towards Trump's way. Arizona's 11 electoral votes are up for grabs in a state that has been shifting politically over the past few cycles. In 2020, Biden narrowly won Arizona, flipping it blue for the first time since 1996. However, Trump is now favored to win it back, driven by his strong performance among suburban voters, particularly in Maricopa County, which accounts for about 60% of the state's population. The state's growing Hispanic population, along with its traditionally conservative older voters, make Arizona a complex battleground. While Democrats have made some gains in recent years, including winning both the Senate seats, Trump's appeal among Arizona's suburban and rural voters remains strong. Harris will need to mobilize younger voters, minorities, and suburban women to hold on to Arizona, while Trump will focus on solidifying his base and winning back those who may have wavered in 2020. Moving on to the Midwest, we enter a region that has often considered the heart of the electoral battleground. These states were crucial to Trump's victory in 2016 and to Biden's comeback in 2020. In 2024, the Midwest remains the most critical region, with the Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania being the ultimate swing states. Wisconsin is currently tilting Democratic, with Harris holding a razor-thin 51% chance of winning. This state, with its 10 electoral votes, has been one of the most closely contested states in recent elections. In 2016, Trump won Wisconsin by less than 1%, flipping it for the first time since 1984. Biden narrowly won it back in 2020 by a similar margin. Wisconsin's electorate is deeply divided, with rural areas strongly supporting Trump and urban areas, particularly Milwaukee and Madison, leaning heavily Democratic. The suburbs around Milwaukee are more mixed and could be the deciding factor. Harris's challenge will be to maintain Democratic turnout in the cities while making inroads in the suburbs. Trump, on the other hand, will focus on energizing his rural base and appealing to the blue-collar workers who feel left behind by economic changes. Wisconsin's history of close elections means that every vote will count, and the state could easily flip back to Trump if Harris's campaign falters. Michigan, with its 15 electoral votes, is slightly more secure to Harris, with a 58% chance of victory. However, the margin is slim, and the state remains highly competitive. Michigan was one of the key states that Trump flipped in 2016, winning it by just 0.23%. Biden won it back in 2020 with a margin of around 3%, but the state remains divided. The key to Michigan's electoral dynamics lies in the Detroit metropolitan area, where high turnout among African American voters is essential for any Democratic victory. However, the Trump has made inroads in the more rural areas and the industrial areas of the state, particularly in the Upper Peninsula, in the rural counties around the Grand Rapids. Harris will need to ensure strong turnout in Detroit and the surrounding suburbs, while also addressing the economic concerns of blue-collar voters in the rest of the state. Michigan's economic recovery, particularly in the automotive industry, could play a significant role in how voters perceive the candidates. Finally, we come to Pennsylvania, the ultimate prize in this election. With 19 electoral votes, Pennsylvania could very well decide the entire election. Trump currently has a 53% chance of winning the state, making it one of the closest battlegrounds. Pennsylvania was a tipping point in both the 2016 and the 2020 election, delivering the final electoral votes needed for both Trump's and Biden's victory. The state's diverse electorate, which includes rural voters in the center of the western parts of the state, suburban voters from around Philadelphia, and urban voters in Pittsburgh, make it a microcosm of the national political landscape. In 2016, Trump won Pennsylvania by just 0.072%, flipping the state that had voted Democratic in every presidential election since 1992. Biden narrowly won it back in 2020 by a margin of over just 1%. The state's economic issues, particularly those affecting the coal and steel industries, as well as concerns about healthcare and the environment, will be key factors in this election. Harris will need to focus on turning out voters in the Philadelphia suburbs, where Democrats have made gains in recent years, while also holding on to support in Pittsburgh. Trump, meanwhile, will focus on energizing his base in the rural parts of the state and appealing by blue-collar workers who feel that their economic concerns have been ignored by the Democratic Party. In summary, the tilt states, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, are the final battlegrounds that will decide the 2024 election. These states are all within reach for both candidates, with margins so tight that any last-minute shifts could change the outcome. The campaigns will need to invest heavily in these states, focusing on turnout, persuasion, and addressing the specific concerns of voters in each region. The outcome in these states will likely determine who wins the White House, making them the most critical states in this election cycle. As we stand, Trump is currently leading. The remaining states are close are way too close to call, but Trump's path to 270 is clearer than Harris's. With Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona potentially in his column, Trump could end up with 287 electoral votes, leaving Harris with just 251. The momentum has shifted, and as we approach November, all eyes will be on these states. Thank you guys again for watching, and let me know down in the comment section who do you think is going to win this election. I want to hear you guys' opinions. And other than that, guys, I would really appreciate if you guys like and subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us provide daily and in-depth election analysis until November. So other than that, thank you guys so much and have a blessed and beautiful day.